Welcome to the 2023 edition of Trieste Next. I'm Luca, an AI-generated speaker who will presenting our festival. In the next 3 days we will be talking about a new world. This is the title of the 12th edition of our Festival of Science. Innovation and research, the ethical limits and new frontiers of science will be the center of all our events. What will the new world be like? Will we be able to face the challenges of the near future applying new scientific discoveries and technologies in a sustainable way? This will be the underlying theme of Trieste Next, with 100 events in English and Italian, the Science Book of the Year Literary Award, 300 speakers, 70 activities for schools and 40 exhibition spaces that are open for everybody in the city center close to the town hall. Before leaving the floor to our next panelists, I would like to thank all the scientific institutions within the Trieste City of Knowledge Network, the main partner together with our content partners and sponsors for supporting our project. Mostly, thank you to the 200 volunteers who are helping us. I have one last remark for all of you. The next event will last 75 minutes. Our speakers will answer all of your questions in the final 15 minutes. Also, please remember to check the updated schedule of events on our website. Thank you and enjoy our festival.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Farewell to Ice. Today we are connecting with Peter Wadhams. He is the UK's most experienced sea ice scientist with 46 years of research on sea ice and ocean processes in the Arctic and the Antarctic. This has focused on expeditions and measurements in the field, which has involved more than 50 expeditions to both polar regions, working from ice camps, icebreakers, aircraft, and uniquely Royal submarines, with 6 submerged voyages to North Pole. His research group in Cambridge has been the only UK group with the capacity to carry out fieldwork on sea ice. He is a professor of ocean physics and is the author of numerous publications on dynamics and thermodynamics of sea ice thickness, waves in ice, icebergs, ocean convection, and kindred topics. The current main topics of research in the groups are sea ice properties, dynamics, and distributions in thickness and concentration. He is also a pioneer in the use of AUVs under sea ice using multi-beam sonar to map bottom features, work which has been done from UK nuclear submarines. He began his research career at the Scott Polar Research Institute, Cambridge University, where he rose to become director. He moved to his present position in 2001. He has also held visiting professorships in Tokyo, National Institute of Polar Research, Monterey at the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School, Seattle at the University of Washington, and Loyola, Green Scholar at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. He was coordinator of several European Union Arctic flagship projects like ESOP, Green Ice, Convection, and others, and is currently on the steering committee of the EU IceArc project, as well as major U.S. Office of Naval Research Initiatives in the Arctic. He served 8 years on the scientific committee of the European Environment Agency and has served on panels of the National Academy of Sciences, USA. In 1990, he received the Etelgas Prize for Environmental Sciences, and he has also been awarded the Polar Medal UK in 1987 and the W.S. Bruce Prize of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. As well as being professor at Cambridge, he is an associate professor at the Laboratory de Oceanographie de Villafranca, run by Université Pierre at Marie Curie, Paris, and is a professor at the Università Politecnica della Marche, Ancona. He is a member of the Finnish Academy and is a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. So he's connecting with us through Zoom today. And thank you, Peter, for connecting, and I hope you're feeling better today.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Okay, let's start. The title of my talk is Farewell to Ice, because basically this is the title of a book that I wrote about sea ice. and basically saying it's vanishing. So the title is borrowed from Hemingway, Farewell to Arms. And but here we are, the Farewell to Ice. It's available in many different countries. If you want to buy a copy here in Italy, there's a Dio Adagio that was translated by my wife, Pia, and is available from Polari. So let's start with where the ice is and how much of it there is. And here's a picture that was taken a long time ago, like in 1970, in fact, during my first research voyage in an icebreaker. Here's the icebreaker at the top of the picture, which is the Hudson, Canadian breaker. And we were sailing through very heavy pack ice. And you'll see that there are two types of ice, basically, the Arctic. Multi-year ice, which is very thick, and here this is mostly multi-year ice, and first-year ice, which is much thinner and easier to break through. So here we were trying to break our way through multi-year ice in order to get through the Northwest Passage. And here's another shot of us in the Northwest Passage, a different voyage. The three ships involved are the moving from right to left, the Frontier Spirit, the Terry Fox, which is a Canadian government icebreaker, and the San Roche, which is named after one of the first ships to go through the Northwest Passage. And here we can see very heavy pack ice. It's thinner actually than the ice we saw before, but it's very heavily packed in. In fact, we got stuck. So we can see that the Arctic is changing all the time. And the first person to notice this was actually the American consul in Bergen, and he sent a report to the State Department to say that the Arctic is warming up. And here's what he said, basically, that unheard of high temperatures. And very changes going on. So okay, now the people were noticing that the Arctic was changing, but at the same time, nobody knew actually what was causing the changes, what was happening to give you altered conditions in the Arctic. And the first person to do that and to make these discoveries was a Swedish professor, Svante Arrhenius. Now, this was a classic work that he wrote in 1896. And one of the things we should remember about Svante Arrhenius is that he is related to Greta Thunberg, who is a more recent expert on ice. And she is, I think, his great niece. Anyway, he wrote this book, paper on the influence of carbon dioxide in the air on the temperature of the ground. And this is just the first page of it. And we didn't know anything about what was going on until Svante came along. And he had a knowledge of the gas laws, which people didn't understand until then. And this showed that the absorption bands by which which caused some energy to be absorbed when it was being transmitted, and these absorption bands showed the presence of certain species, which, especially carbon dioxide, methane, which take some of the heat away from the planetary emissions. Okay. Now, nothing was done about this. We didn't understand it, and no measurements were made until 1958 was when we really started to actually measure what was going on in the Arctic, and this was using a newly set up lab on the top of Mauna Loa, which is a volcano in Hawaii, and here's the equipment which was measuring the presence of gases in the atmosphere and how much carbon dioxide, especially, was in the atmosphere. So this has started in 1958, and until that time, there was nothing. But now we have measurements being done daily from this system, and here's a typical set of results. In fact, this is results for 20 years of measurements, and we can see that the red here is parts per million of the parts per million of carbon dioxide, and we can see that the main thing is that the carbon dioxide level has been rising very rapidly. In fact, exponentially, it's faster than linear, and this has been going on since we started to take the measurements in 1958. Now, because carbon dioxide is related to other gases in the atmosphere, and then we find that if the carbon dioxide level goes up, then the other levels of other gases are also rising, and especially the air temperature is rising. So when we see the carbon dioxide level rising in this fashion, and we look at rise in air temperature, we see that's rising as well. And here's the air temperature recorded for the last, the period from 1880 until today. And a nice way to look at this is what we can call a kind of a quilt, a climate quilt. You know, that is to say, if we look at all these numbers, these are the order in which we see temperatures. So, for instance, if we look at January, the top row here, then we can see that the coldest January, which was number 40 here, it's 40. The coldest of the 40 years was in the middle of this period, but the warmest of 40 years is in the red. That's in warmer conditions. So what we're seeing is that we're seeing warmer and colder conditions depending on how the climate is changing. Right. Well, that's the conditions of change, but we can pull out the most extreme cases. And the hottest day ever, as far as human race is concerned, that's the 2023 this year. The hottest day has ever been recorded was in July of this year, and it was 52.2 degrees centigrade, and it was measured, as you can see, in the desert of Central Asia, and it's never been that cold, that hot since. But of course, this record is going to be broken soon because temperatures are rising everywhere in the world. There's a Canadian record here as well, which is of interest mainly because Canada is not an inherently hot country. Now, if you're in the Central Asia, you expect it to be hot, but in Canada you don't, and especially you don't expect it to be hot in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, which is where this record was obtained in the Lytton in British Columbia. And this is a place where it's normally cold. In fact, you normally have snow, but this particular time was a record heat that's never been exceeded. And not only was it never exceeded, but it had an enormous effect because it's a very dry region, and this led to high temperatures, and in fact, high temperatures which caused brush fires, and Lytton ceased to exist. It was burnt down. So that's an extraordinary effect occurring in a place where you didn't expect it. So if we look at all of the changes over the past few years, they really are most extreme in regions where you get the hottest regions in the world, and the 6 hottest years were the last 6 years. So the world's getting hotter, and this is one of the ways that you can tell. And if we want to look at the world record temperature excess for anywhere in the world, we have to go to Antarctica, and there we see Dome Sea, which is in the central part of Antarctica. And there was an extreme case, that's the red case here, the world temperature record excess, which was 38 degrees above the normal temperatures for the Antarctic. So not only are the Arctic regions giving excessive temperatures, but so is the Antarctic, which is an exceptionally unusual effect. The warming rate has observed the reason. Not only have we been having these record temperatures, but we're having a record steady gain in temperature. And this shows how this has been going in the last few years. The blue here is the temperatures for the global warming temperatures for the last decade. And then suddenly the global warming temperatures started to jump ahead. And so the red is the global warming temperatures from 2020 onwards, and the blue is global warming temperatures before that. So we can see that the global warming temperatures are rising and have been taking a forward leap since 2020. And this is just to compare with the way things used to be, that the brown here is the land, the blue is the sea ice as it used to be. And when I was young, where the sea ice covered the coasts of the Arctic, and it was there all the time. You always had sea ice present, and now we don't. And this is showing evidence of that retreat of that is as it was in my youth. And here it is now, and this is all of these areas that are enclosed in yellow are the present changes in sea ice area, which are quite enormous. Half the sea ice is gone. So what does that mean? Well, it means there are big changes if you're trying to live in the Arctic. So here we have people who live in the Arctic, that is Inuit hunters, and you can see a couple of sledge parties here. On the sea ice, there's an iceberg as well in the picture. But the extraordinary thing is that the dogs which you see are the same dogs here. This is a photo taken 6 years later, although it's the same ice, and in fact it's the same dogs, and it's the same sledge. So it's an identical scene, but instead of being dry ice everywhere, what you can see is that the animals are having to wade through water to get to where they want to go. So the difference is now we're having water in places where we used to get land ice. So how do we measure these things? The idea is that the best way of doing it is to actually get underneath the ice, because if you get underneath the ice, you can measure looking upwards with an echo sounder and see how thick the ice is. So this is the secret of measuring ice thickness, is you have to have a friendly submarine to take you to where you want to go, and then you can measure the thickness. So this is a British submarine surfaced in some fairly thin ice, and this is the scientists involved. You have to, if you're a scientist wanting to measure ice thickness, you have to get on board your submarine and stay in some very uncomfortable location. This is the torpedo tubes, and here's my colleague and I doing our thing in the torpedo tubes. So that way we can measure the thickness of the ice, and this is how we realise that the ice is getting thinner. Not only is it getting thinner, but its average thickness is going down everywhere. This is some measurements done right away from the South Pole to the North Pole, and we see that the average thickness of the ice, or the average temperature of the ice is going down, and it's most obvious when you're in the Arctic itself. Okay, well, if we look at that region very carefully, we can see certain changes which we don't expect. One of them is Siberia, which you think of as a cold place. And we see that the surface air temperature over Siberia has actually been going up. And that's the red. And we see the last few years, the last 20 years, has been actually steadily increasing air temperature. Now, what does that do? Well, this is what it does. It sets fire to the tundra. We know that the Arctic is covered in tundra. That's a sort of a sort of nasty, messy mixture of cold and warmer elements, and you think of that as tundra as something that is cold and not an aspect that you want to see. But here we see that the tundra has caught fire. We have a brush fire, which in fact is the biggest brush fire that's ever been recorded, and it's still going on. The tundra is still on fire, and this is what it looks like on a satellite. So there's cold regions you don't expect to see any warmth, are catching fire. And of course, as well as the more familiar fires that we're getting in warm places, this is a fire in California, and where a brush has caught fire, and this is in a later stage of that fire, which is near Pasadena. So we know that we're getting, in hot places, we're getting brush fires, which are really causing huge amounts of damage. But we're also getting the brush fires in cold places where you don't expect them. Now, other changes that are happening. I showed you this picture of the the central Arctic, which looked as if the ice was disappearing. Well, the weird thing about this is that the ice is disappearing, but it's not disappearing in the way you expect. You expect it to be getting thinner and reducing its area and then vanishing. But what we see here is on the left-hand side, we've got ice in summer, and it's different thicknesses or different colours. So this is typical summer ice cover. But if we look on the right-hand side, we also have a similar area of ice, but we can see that it's much thinner. If you look at the scale on the bottom, this ice is only about 0.5 metre thick, while the ice in the other picture is 1, 2, 3 metres thick. So what we're seeing is there's just as much ice there, there's just as much of an area of ice, but the ice is very much thinner. And when we look at it, we see a thinning of the ice cover. This is something we can't explain at the moment, because this is the way it used to look. When I was young, this was what multi-year ice looked like. It really is very, very formidable ice cover, which is difficult to break through. But that's no longer the case. You've got thin ice. And when you've got thin ice, there's a lot of problems. One of them is if you want to travel on that ice or work on it, you have to consider the fact that it's much thinner than it used to be. So this is a camp, an ice camp, where you have equipment on the ice. You have people sleeping on the ice. It's a little town, but it's much thinner than it used to be. So it's very much unsafe to have a camp here on ice that's now much thinner. And in fact, we've given up on doing experiments on ice, thin ice now, because of this thickness problem. And so instead of doing the work on ice, we use a ship, an ice-strengthened ship. This is a schooner, and we can protect it better from ice threats. When we look at the ice in the way that we've got used to, that is using echo sounder, then we see that it is thick, that there's still thick bits and thin bits, but on the whole, it's much thinner than it used to be. And we've seen this from looking at the mean ice draft. That's the mean thickness of different parts of the Arctic. And we see that the blue is different parts of the Arctic regions, and the green is the thinning recently. And we can see that wherever we look, the ice has got thinner. So let's move on to this, and we're now looking at other things that are affecting the ice. One of them is that the ice is now not only is the ice thinner, but the ocean itself is thinning, and we're seeing it's getting more acidic. And when the ocean gets more acidic, it means that things that you're looking at are like foraminifera, that's a kind of plankton. They don't sink to the seabed anymore. They stay near the surface. So the ocean gets more acidic, and that's really bad for the conditions in the ocean. So that's one thing, and another big thing which is changing and is something that we're studying here in Italy is the fact that methane is being released from the Arctic, and that methane is causing an impact on the ice. So the way it works is that there's a region in the centre of the Arctic, that's the blue here, which is thick, which is high thickness, and when you have when you look at that and you try to dig through it, you find that there's a layer of which looks like ice, but it's called methane hydrates. It's ice which is actually not ice at all. It's a methane salt, and that methane hydrate is actually catches fire very easily. This is looking at an image of a piece of the Arctic ice which has caught fire. And worse still is if you have a huge area of methane, and then the methane again catches fire in sort of plumes, and here's a set of methane plumes. And here's some closer up view of these methane bubbles. And there's real worry as to what this methane is doing to the planet. I showed you the left-hand picture, which is how the way that carbon dioxide is going up in quantity, but methane is rising in quantity just as fast, in fact faster. This means that we're getting a global methane growth, but we're also getting a carbon dioxide growth. And both of these factors together are causing atmospheric components to increase and make the trends in the atmosphere positive. So here we see the methane, in fact, rising in quantity faster than carbon dioxide does. So this is worrying because the methane is being released from the Arctic, and here we can see that it's actually having an impact on the nature of the ice. Here's a typical case of this, because the permafrost that is sitting in the ice is permanently rising in quantity. This is a place where you're measuring permafrost. It's it's a place called Dead Horse, which is not a great name. But if you want to look at a big area of permafrost, then you have to look at land surface, and we're looking at land which is being eaten away by the permafrost. And here we have a permafrost slumping, it's called. That's this big area is just giving way, and you're getting first of all, you're getting cliffs of permafrost where the ice is still there, but this ice is going to melt away. You're getting buildings affected where this permafrost is getting to eat away at the foundations of buildings. So you get typically in the Arctic these kind of conditions now. And so we're getting a whole load of new effects that are associated with permafrost, which is adding to the impact of the methane itself. Anyway, there it is. We're seeing this change, and we can see it in many ways. You can see it from global sea level rise, and this is because in places where you're getting release of water, for instance, in coastal masses where there's water leaking from the land surface, you get global mean sea level rising. And you can see here's evidence of sea level rise. And this is how it's changed. The rate of rise has changed, and we can see it's changing quite rapidly. That in the 1990s, it was rising at about 2 millimeters a year, and then it rose to 3 millimeters, and now 4.6 millimeters a year. So that's a steadily increasing rate of rise of sea level due to the fact that there's a source of water, which is the land, the ice melting on the sea surface. Okay, well, one of the reasons the ice does melt so fast is because the land surface, the surface of the ice, is not pure, clean ice. It's got all of this gunk on it, and you can see that the mess that is the ice surface, and it's called black ice because you're getting the ice surface is picking up dirt from the fact that it's a glacier. This picks up dirt. The dirt covers the ice like this, and that means that it's melting quickly because it's black. It's called black ice, and this was on a day in August, and in fact, this is the same day, and we see the black ice here is on a slope, but we can see the way in which it's covering the black colour is covering the ice, making it melt more quickly, and we can see it melting away in the picture in the foreground, where the ice is melting and increasing sea level. So the net effect of all of this ice is to cause a rise in global sea levels. And this is the way in which sea level has changed in the last few decades. It's becoming an accelerating change, causing sea level to rise. Now we have how much are we actually getting in the way of methane? Well, we have a lot of sources of methane. I've shown you the one that comes from land, but there's a lot of sources as well from different sea sources and different terrestrial sources. You can see the biggest source here is wetlands. That's the marshy land is giving rise to melting of permafrost, and you're getting methane. Finally, I'm just going to say something about the extreme weather events which are causing real anguish to the planet at the moment. These extreme weather events are the huge heat islands and cold islands, which are causing the really bad effects. And one of the reasons we think that this is happening is because we have normally cold air in the Arctic, with warm air in the tropics, and something is happening. I mean, there's so many bizarre things happening at the moment with the weather, but one of them is that this cold air, which is called the jet stream, we know that from the fact that this is where you see cold air being driven in southwards. But instead of the cold air being contained within limits, instead it's becoming a randomly varying pattern, but a pattern in which the cold air has southward and northward movements, and these southward and northward movements lead to what we call the extreme weather events. And the extreme weather events, the problem with them is that they don't just stay in the place where they're put. They don't stay in the low latitudes. They move, and typically they're found in temperate latitudes where they can really affect the growth of crops. The brown here is occurrence of cropland, and we can see that crops grow best in the temperate latitudes in Europe and in temperate Asian latitudes, and this is where we get the best crop yields. But we're not getting those crop yields now because of the way in which these extreme events are occurring. So we really have to worry, and the way we worry is to look at what the cost of food is, because that's the real worry. And here we see the UN has a measure of crop average prices, and we find that the food prices gave two big peaks in the last few years, and each of those peaks would give really nasty, difficult, expensive food prices, and there's no reason why that shouldn't continue to happen. So we've got a real problem here. Not only that, but we have a real problem with population. This is the population estimates for the next few years, and we can see that mostly populations are rising slowly, but the big increase, the alarm here is Africa is scheduled to quadruple its numbers, and of course you can't deal with a quadrupling of numbers when you have these problems. So that's roughly what we're finding with weather, climate, and the ice. And so Pia's now going to talk about the polar educators, and which is a very important aspect of how we manage our learning about this.
I'll have the question and answer. I think you question and answer now.
Okay, actually we're having question and answers now, Pia says, but she's going to
later. After
later.
That's the plan.
Oh, that's the plan.
You do question and answer, and then I finish up.
Okay. Well, why don't you do the question and answer?
Just up to you. Is the plan to have question and answer now?
Yes, so we'll take some questions from the audience, and some we have from people connecting with us online. Is anyone from the audience? All right, so one of the questions that we have from the people connecting online is that why is climate change impacting our Earth poles more than other regions?
Impacting on where, scusi?
The question is, why is climate change impacting our Earth poles more than other regions?
Earth poles. Sorry, non abbiamo capito. Un po', magari dirlo in italiano. Impact on Earth poles?
Earth poles.
Mi scusi, ma non capiamo che cosa vuol dire. Lo può dire in italiano?
Non capisco.
Sì, mi sente?
Sì.
Mi sente? Perché il cambiamento climatico sta impattando di più sui poli terrestri più che sulle altre regioni.
Poles, okay. Grazie. Thanks. Okay, Earth poles rather than
yes,
the rest
okay,
of
good question. Because it is the Arctic is warming faster than any other part of the world, but so is the Antarctic now. When up to a few years ago, the Arctic was the most rapidly warming part of the world, and we could see why, because of the fact that the sea ice was melting, and that was giving you a rapid rise in sea level and a rapid rise in temperature. But the Antarctic wasn't being affected by that. But now the Antarctic has started to warm up very dramatically, as you've seen from the news. Glaciers are disappearing, are melting. The whole Antarctic region is melting as fast as the Arctic was. So the reasons are the same in the sense that it's the ice is melting and causing sea level to rise, but it's Antarctic ice as opposed to Arctic ice. But the effect is the same. The sea level is rising rapidly because of the fact that the ice is melting both in the Arctic and the Antarctic, and we need to worry about that. Yeah, another question?
Yeah, another question is, some scientists see the possibility of a runaway feedback loop with methane venting into the Earth's atmosphere. Is this threat real, and what risk does it pose to life on Earth?
Yes, it is real. I talked a little bit about methane, and the conclusion is that it's the most serious threat to our well-being and climate of anything at the moment, because it's causing the methane is causing a rapid warming of the Arctic and the Antarctic, and it's happening in more and more because we're finding bigger and bigger regions which are methane releasing regions. So there's the Arctic is becoming a methane sink, which is a rapidly rising source of gas. So we're really seeing something nasty going on worldwide, and something we can't get away from. We can't easily find a way to stop the flow of methane.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So the next question says that, how does oil drilling make the biological risk to the Earth's polar regions even more severe?
Severe. Oil drilling. Well, in itself, the main problem with oil drilling, of course, is the hydrocarbon release, and that's the same problem as oil and gas. But one way in which it is severe is that we've got this threat from methane, and if we could control it, we would be in a better position. And the best way to control it is to drill through into the methane and release it. But we can't find an easy way to do that. So it is at the moment an extra problem.
Okay, thank you so much. And now we're going to move to Pia Casarini for some final remarks. She is the chairwoman of Polar Educators International. She has 2 degrees from Milan Cattolica University in Modern Languages and Italian Letters, and an MPhil in Polar Studies from Cambridge University, UK. Thank you for joining us, Maria.
Hello, Maria Pia. Thank you. Right. Yes, thank you very much to Antonio, who always is very supportive of Polar Educators International. This is a network of polar educators. We're not talking about teachers, because really anybody can be an educator. And this network was founded in 2012 at International Polaria in Montreal. And it's grown into now having over 3,000 members, connected with Facebook, connected with directly in council and executive committee. So who we are spread all over the world, mostly in the United States, but also in Europe. And our vision is to aim to provide a deeper understanding of current polar science to a global audience. And really, we like to have scientists together with educators to explain things. Sometimes educators need the scientists, and scientists need the educator to get their message most strongly out to the public. One of our main ways of impacting the world of education is to have international workshops. We started the first one in 2013 in Portugal, 2015 in Germany, 2017 in Italy, in Rovereto, 2019 Cambridge, and the last one after COVID was 2022 in Houten in Iceland. The next one will be in the United States. We chose to have these workshops in Europe because counteracting the fact that there are many, many more people from the United States that belong to Polar Educators International. Now, I would really encourage any of you in the audience to join us, and there will be later on how to join. This is our next international workshop that we are going to have in Boulder, Colorado, together with this ICAP 4 is an international Arctic meeting that happens every 10 years and gives direction for the following 10 years of research. You can see here on the right, we were in Cambridge in 2019, and it was a really big number. We were over 80 people from all over the world. A smaller group went to Iceland in 2022 because still COVID was rampant and it was kind of dangerous to attend. We, in these 10 years, we become part of other networks, and we've been invited, for instance, to take part in the Arctic Science Ministerial, which is a group of foreign ministers that look after research in the Arctic, especially. And our point is now to have a World Cafe that we started, as you see, in Vienna, in the ASSW, is Arctic Science Summit Week. It was in Vienna in February, and we started with indigenous people joining us through Zoom, and then we had workshops together in the venue in Vienna. Now we also have things online. In fact, we are about to launch our new website at the beginning of October. And we participated at the pre-COP26 in Milan, and I was in charge of putting together 24 hours of a share-a-thon. And now each of these hours has now become part of some in the new website. They are part of resources that people can just choose, select, and use if they want to share some subjects or polar subjects. It was also very good that I was invited to give a press conference at COP26 in Glasgow, and I had a very interesting group of people with me, Sunniva Serbi and Hilda Follemström, from one from Canada and Hilda from Svalbard. And they spent 19 months in a hut doing research on Svalbard. The most important item that we are working on at the moment is this Polar Resource Book. This book, called officially Polar Science and Global Climate, is a handbook to help educators to approach the different scientific problems. It's quite old because it was paid for, and as a result of the International Polar Year, which was in 2007, 2008. And that is why we are now proposing an updated edition. And what I would like to really share with you, and also give our heartfelt thanks to Antonio, who allowed me to talk about this Polar Resource Book last year in Parma. And the person in the audience, a British person, actually gave a donation from his charity of $20,000 towards the updated edition. And this is an excellent thing that really, thanks to the generosity of Lawrence Stadler, but also of Antonio Maccone, that gave this opportunity, because he believes in polar education as well. These are our ways of reaching us: the website, www.polareducator.org, the email, and my own email, which is a Gmail. And we are also on Facebook and X. At the moment, we are still keeping with X, and Instagram at Polar Educators. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions at all, send us an email, and please join council if you like. We have elections in May every year. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for connecting with us, both Maria Pia and Peter. And as for the International Academy students, this was the last event for the event. And thank you so much for joining us. It has been it's been a pleasure to host you guys. I hope you had a good time at the event. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.